Okay, thank you everyone for joining us this morning for our brief meeting. Beginning with welcome and introductions. Phil, you want to run with that?
You bet. Just running through the roll call again, for those who I believe are present from the committee, Denise Baker, Jamie Sturgill, Natalie Steffner, Melissa Bonson, Julie Haggerty, Ann Disworth as chair, David Erickson, and Dylan Malone. Uh, did I miss anybody on the committee that I did not announce? Please, make yourselves known, either voice or in the chat pod. And otherwise, I don't feel you need to go through the remainder of the list. If you're looking at if you're interested, look at the participant list. So I defer back to Ann.
Okay, so we'll move into our legislative update.
Okay, well, I guess I'm here to give the legislative update today, and I'm going to share a few documents with you. I think I would preface it by saying that there's a lot been happening in the last couple of weeks. And the obviously, hopefully everybody knows that the bill, House File 1031, did pass the House. It has been assigned a subcommittee in the Senate, in the Senate Ways and Means Committee. And that subcommittee, I understand, is scheduled to meet at 1 p.m. this afternoon. And of course, I do believe there's going to be a Zoom option. So if anybody's interested in sitting in on that, you may do so virtually. Um, the the short history is that uh, the bill, before it was passed in the House, did uh, uh, have an amendment adopted. And the amendment did include some, but not all of the suggestions that had been made by either the Iowa County Recorders Association or the ESS Coordinating Committee. And at that time, the position that had been taken by the association, it did go back and forth a little bit, but for a time it was a no recommendation, and the ESS was in a similar position. But the position currently on House File 1031, as I understand it, by both the association and the ESS Coordinating Committee, is neutral or undecided. I think it bears saying that Anne, as the chair of the ESS committee, it was just not feasible for us to call a meeting every time that a position needed to be taken. And Anne, as the chair of the committee, did make some executive decisions, obviously with input from a number of other people. So the current position on House File 1031 is undecided. That said, uh, the Recorders Association leadership, which includes Anne, has reviewed a number of issues in House File 1031. And I think it is fair to say, and I mean no criticism toward anyone in saying this, but there are a number of those technical things that should be addressed in the bill that uh, maybe could be worded a little bit better, or maybe the policy might be better defined, um, and you could expend some effort trying to perfect the bill. Um, but the current situation is that the legislature is getting close to adjournment. There isn't a lot of time to go back and forth between the House and the Senate, and any amendment adopted in the Senate is going to have to go back to the House. And there is no guarantee that the House would take up a Senate amendment, even if it was approved. So there are some unknowns in the process. And so the if I should, I'll just give my interpretation of kind of the position that the leadership of the Recorders Association took. They identified a few things, not everything that should be fixed, but just a few what were felt to be important things to communicate to the subcommittee and the Senate Ways and Means Committee that these would be important things to consider before taking final action. So a simple one pager has been circulated that would do essentially three things. The first is that it would increase the contribution that would be made by any county that withdraws from the 28E agreement to $2 per document allocated from the base recording fee, I'm sorry, from $1 allocated from the base recording fee from those non-participating counties, that is, non-participating in the 28E agreement. Um, and the amendment would increase that dollar amount from one to two. It's not the full three. There's counties that would participate in the 28-year agreement on an ongoing basis. They would contribute the $3 allocation as it was originally proposed. Um, and uh, the there was discussion in the House before uh, the House finished action on it to possibly increase that to $2. The decision was made to not do that, so the dollar amount was kept at $1 as it was approved by the House. So one of the top priorities that was identified was to increase it at least back to that $2 that was being discussed in the House. It was not ultimately
Recorder's
included.
office. This is Mary. Can I help you?
Hey, I would just kind of remind everybody to mute themselves if you're unless you want everybody to hear your conversation, you might want to do that. So I'm just scrolling through the list here real quickly to make sure that you have done that. So please do that. So where I left off was the Recorders Association in their review said, that would be a difference maker to them. And so that idea has been advanced. Associated with that is a kind of a technical thing that we clarify that the monies that were contributed from that $2 should be used not just for the state public search system, but also helping contribute to the support of the proposed shielding program, otherwise known as Back to Blue, and also the creation of a statewide property notification system. Just- Primarily just to clarify that, you know, if there were funds that came from that stream or channel, that it should be used for that purpose. Um, for the $3 allocation from the 28E participating counties, that could be used for anything that was articulated in the new version of Section 331-605B, subsection 1. And those issues are covered in that list of things. So this would just simply make it more consistent to allow for the use of those funds for that purpose. Um, I'm not sure there's a lot of controversy in that, just because it would be a very similar search-related function, and and so the point of maybe a policy difference is that um, there's a desire for at least that $2 level to be put back in the bill or to be put in the bill, and other people may not agree with that. So that's one. Then the other two things that were identified really, I think, could be considered technical in orientation, and that is, for example, the last bullet there relates to the effective date of certain provisions in the bill. Now, some of the important points in the bill, such as the fee changes and also the provisions that would affect participation in the 28E agreement, those would still be effective July 1. But some things that might require some work on the part of either ESS and Iowa Land Records or on the part of the local service providers. Um, the timeline from the middle of May to July 1 really is fairly short. And even though the service providers have received communication about, what they might expect, there's still not a lot of time to allow for them to make technical changes. So an example, just one example of that, and I'm not going to list out the whole thing, but one of them would be in the current version of House File 1031, there is a provision that would change the format requirement for document reference numbers to a standard uh, numeric sequence. Okay, um, and you may or may not think that was done exactly the way it should have been, but it is a requirement that's in the bill. Um, Making a change like that is not a trivial thing. At least it wouldn't be for some service providers. And so it might be a good idea to change the effective date of some of those things from July 1, 2025 to January 1, 2026. So there's really not an intent to make a huge change in policy there, but it's much more of a let's be realistic about it and make that change. Now, if that is not changed, that doesn't mean the end of the world. It just means that we have to all be aware, and I would say the legislature should need to be aware that not everybody's going to meet that July 1 deadline. And there's going to be a implementation period that everybody just needs to recognize. So it's intended to be a technical change to just acknowledge that reality that some things may not be done right on July 1. And then in the middle bullet in this document relates to a provision concerning the transfer of funds from the participating counties in their allocation activity. Basically, the bill currently reads by the first day of the month that the treasurer has to do that. Um, in the very early version of the bill that was drafted and submitted to the Legislative Services Agency, that document said that it should be done on a monthly basis, similar to what current law says. But in the drafting by LSA, particularly as you looked at Senate File 371, that wasn't done exactly the way it was proposed. And they did use in Senate File 371 this language about the first day of the month. And in fact, I see a little bit of a typo here that I'll have to fix, but the idea is to say instead of saying by the first day of each month, it would instead say on a monthly basis to give a little bit more flexibility. So that that is the substance of it. And so the request has been submitted through um, the ICRA leadership and through the people who are representing uh, ESS and the ICRA that it would be desirable to have these amendments adopted. And so, as I understand it, those things have been communicated to the members of the subcommittee, and they're meeting this afternoon, and we did not um, uh, 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 Aaron has submitted a question that or a comment saying, "Did we not see the email that Renee sent on April 29th that included Representative Nordman's response?" Um, and I have to be honest with you and say I do not know who all has seen or not seen that communication. But I think it would be fair to generally describe, and if you want to revise a comment on this, Aaron, in your message in the chat pod, is that uh, uh, Representative Norman did apparently make some comments suggesting that, that they wouldn't necessarily support some of these changes, and that it could affect whether or not the bill is ultimately adopted this year or not. And so I know that the leadership of the association was aware of that comment, that I have a general understanding of, and you may want to correct me on that, if necessary. But notwithstanding that, there was a desire to still communicate to the Senate that these changes would be desirable. So, um, beyond that, I'm not sure how broadly that communication was distributed, to be totally honest with you. So I just don't know. Um, so um, that's a summary of where we are at. I'm not going to spend much time on this at all because it really is not pertinent to any decision. But there were some other technical changes that were considered, and I did include those in the material that was distributed to the committee this morning. And those of you who are not on that distribution list, it is being included in the materials that are posted online. These are mostly technical in nature, not a lot of heavy policy references here that would be controversial, but they're just there for reference. Really, these three bulleted items are the main ideas that are being discussed, and generally speaking, the because the ESS committee has not had an opportunity in recent weeks to gather and receive an update or to, as a group, opine on what the position is. We wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to see that before any action was taken on the Senate side. Uh, I'm gonna let Aaron's comment in the chat pod stand on its own, um, and uh, uh, I don't have any further comment on that. I would generally agree that we don't know what will happen, and so the question I think on the table generally for the ESS committee today would be, is there any desire to change your position as far as the registration on the bill? So currently, both ESS and the County Recorders Association are registered as undecided, and advancing these three modifications for consideration by the Senate, with the understanding that we aren't exactly sure what will or will not happen. But the only way you can affect change is to ask for it. Um, I believe that I can fairly represent from a legislative lobbying perspective that the appropriate position at this time would be to continue to remain as neutral or undecided with the advancement of these three ideas. And then, if there is a need to consider a different position, after it's known whether or not these ideas will be advanced, then either Anne would need to, make that decision because she would be on the ground, so to speak, and be able to timely respond. Or if it was deemed warranted, we could have another special meeting to talk about this. So uh, I know I'm kind of giving a broad overview, and uh, I'm gonna defer to Anne and other members of the ICRA executive board that may be present to clarify anything that I may have said that needs to be clarified, And I would be happy to answer any questions that you have. So,
I think many of
This is
our
Julie Haggerty. This
district,
is Julie Haggerty. I have so basically, the way I'm understanding this is that we have amendments proposed, and the one sticking point that we would really like to see change the most is the $2. We want to go from 1 to 2, at least for non-participating counties, which is it's fair. Um, so if our what do we feel that the other recorders are wanting us to do? I guess is where I'm headed with this question, because I understand that they are also sending letters to their legislators, and it seems to me that their biggest sticking point is the $10 per page. So I mean, I'm just wondering if I wonder if we should take the win, I guess, or wait to see if I mean, I agree that the amendment would be great. What do we do? How do we watch this and decide, can we change in the middle of what we see is going to happen, since we're all uncertain about how it's going to play out? Is that what happens? Or I guess somebody needs to educate me maybe just a little bit.
well,
If
I
we go
think,
in, go
yeah,
ahead, Phil.
I think I understand what you're saying, and uh, you can kind of map out different scenarios, but you know, these are not really big ideas, but there are differences of opinion on at least one of them. If the Senate subcommittee, for example, said, we really like to see this bill pass, and uh, we're just going to have to clean things up later, uh, then then it's a decision about, you know, do you want to remain neutral and let it go as is with some reservations, or at that point you could make a decision um, to say, okay, we gave it a shot, and then you could, switch to, a four position, but maybe still with some reservations. Those things would be possible. Um, but if you don't say that you would like to see a change, then you're not going to get a change. I think you can have some certainty of that. And I think that's kind of why the recommendation would be offer these ideas, and see where it goes. But then reevaluate if it's determined that, there are no changes possible.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I understood that correctly.
Mhm.
And I think that the amendments that we're proposing are fair. And I'm especially, the sticking point that I have, and I think everybody is having, is the the funding for Iowa land records, which is hard to say. This is how much of the first $3 goes to preserving the record, and this is the how much goes to the e-submission part of it. And I truly believe that I think that $2 is a fair amount right now. I'd rather that all recorders pay the same. To have a fee structure different for participating and non-participating doesn't seem fair. But I think that the $2 request is a fair request. And I do believe that we have, like Phil says, we have to at least put in a request for a change, even though it may delay this a little bit longer. But I think that the requests are not out of line. But I also don't want to lose I also don't want to cut off our noses to spite our face.
So, member Julie, or excuse me, Jolynn has commented, good questions and comments, Julie. I think all of the elected district representatives are hearing from their from their people. And so I feel like you'll all probably have a good sense of where you need to put us. And I'm not sure if you're ready to make a decision in regard to our status as undecided or for, or where you would like us to be, but that's kind of where we're at now, and we'd like to try to get that taken care of. So,
Well, I would like to propose that we put in our asks, put in our amendments, and go in as undecided, so that our legislators know that we still have we have issue with this bill. But I would also like to say that, again, we don't want to, if we can go that route and see what happens, because we don't know what's going to happen. We're very uncertain, and see what happens, and go for the $10 increase if it doesn't happen the way we want it to. I guess that's where I'm at.
so would you like that to be a motion?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
Phil?
Just for the benefit,
I guess. Go ahead, Phil.
I'm just saying for the benefit of everybody, you want to just succinctly repeat that for everybody.
My motion is that we still go in as undecided. We present our amendments as we have written them, and hope for the best, because I think that they're fair requests. But if we don't get those requests, I say that depending on how it goes, I mean, maybe we don't know, but I can tell you that the $10 fee increase, the $5 fee increase per page is very important to almost everybody. So, and because of the confusion that the two bills have added to the mix, I just think that we should at least show that that the $5 increase was very, very important to us, and then we go as for if it's clear that we're not going to get our amendments passed. Does that make sense, Phil? Am I got the process correctly, or no?
I would try to summarize it by just simply saying continue to remain undecided, but offer these suggestions as a way to improve the bill. And then reevaluate once it's known whether or not they'll be accepted or not. That's kind of how I would interpret it, because um, uh, I would also include the sort of the backdrop that you are also saying the fee increase itself is very important, and you don't want to lose sight of that either.
That's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. And so reevaluate after when we find out how far the amendments would go.
Okay,
and
so
I would say go in as undecided, present our amendments, and reevaluate if it's clear that the amendments aren't going to go. Be accepted.
So, is there a second for that motion to remain undecided and to continue to monitor? From our committee members, if anyone is still able, or continued discussion if you would like.
There is a comment from Don in the chat.
Yeah, right. Okay. Sorry, I wasn't reading the chat for there's been several comments. I was trying to stay focused on the committee conversation on our declaration and next steps. So we have a motion on the floor at the moment. Is there a second for that motion, or does it die for lack of a second?
This is Denise. I'll second that motion.
Okay. Thank you, Denise. Is there any further discussion? Now I can make a note of what some of these comments from the other members attending have been. Kim Painter pointed out that the need to be realistic. It's very clear that we don't know what's going to happen, and we never have, and we never probably will. I believe this bill will make it out of committee, but hope we make decisions based on a realistic view. This is not by any means a fait accompli. Let's see. Then we had discussion about Representative Nordeman's amendment comments. And now Dawn has said, as a bystander, it sounds like the summary of the bill is, or of the motion, is to remain undecided and present amendments again, but not risk the fee increase by staying undecided, even if the amendments are not made. Does that seem right? So, any further discussion from the committee members?
This is Natalie. If we were to go in as, I guess, in favor of it with the amendments, I mean, is that something that happens ever? Or are you just still undecided if you are requesting amendments?
Well, I think as a practical matter, if you were to say we support the bill with this amendment, in a way you're kind of saying that your support is conditional upon the adoption of the amendment, which then kind of makes it sound like if it's not adopted, then you might be against it. Sort of that's how it would be interpreted. So the general view would be if you remain undecided, but say, and we'd really like to see this amendment adopted if possible, then you're not making it adopt this or else. It's we'd really like to we'd really like to advance this, and we get closer to yes if it happens to be adopted, and that's where we want to be. That's sort of the message that you're sending with the stance that's being suggested by Julie. And um, just in there's a lot of reading between the lines in the way things happen in the legislature, and you know, suggesting an amendment, remaining undecided, you know, encouraging, hey, if this gets adopted, we'd really like to get answer yes, but that doesn't, you're not saying if you don't adopt this, it's no. You're not saying that with the position that has been suggested. So, it's also possible to say yes and to be clear about this, but I think kind of given that we're just a few hours away from a subcommittee meeting, this seems to be a comfortable place to be, and still offering the idea, with the understanding that, once you have some knowledge of that, then you can make a decision about maybe being more forthright about it. Yes, that's
Okay,
kind of the
yep.
thought behind it.
No, that makes sense. Just kind of wanted to hear, I guess, hear it played out a little bit more. So nope, I agree with Julie.
Any other comments or discussion from the committee? Hearing none, I guess I'll call for the vote. All in favor of maintaining our status as undecided and monitoring as things progress, please say or type aye.
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 Okay, any others who are opposed to that approach, please say nay or type nay. Okay, it appears as though we have unanimous support for that approach at this juncture. So thank you for that discussion, and we'll continue to keep you updated.
Thank you, Ann. If you'll permit me, I really feel like I want to make a comment about some of the comments that have been in the chat pod about how the negotiation went. And, you could get into the mechanics of that and, you could say, well, I wish it would have been handled differently or, sooner or whatever. I would just say, having been the author of a number of suggested amendments on the House side, that actually were incorporated into the final version of the bill. And so I do not believe it's just correct to say that either side didn't listen to the other. Could we have managed it differently, or could the events have gone in a little bit different way, or do we wish the outcome might have been just a little bit different? Yeah, you could say all of those things at some level, but I have to just say for the record that there were amendments incorporated into the bill before it passed the House that reflected some of the changes that were requested. Not all, but some of them were, and they were substantive changes. Um, and so, to me, I don't mean to get personal or anything, but I would give Representative Nordman some credit for that, because there were changes that were made. Is it still, great from everybody's perspective? Um, no, I think I just want to encourage everybody to recognize that in a legislative process, there are differences of opinion. There are, um, processes that are followed. They're not always pretty, but you have a bill in front of you right now that is better than it was when it started, in my opinion. So looking forward, um, regardless of what happens, I just want everybody to be aware that this has been a dialogue that did result in some changes, and it could result in some additional changes before it's all said and done. And finding that middle space that allows everybody to kind of be more comfortable with where they are, is sort of what happens in a legislative process. So I'm not going to, I can't close this conversation without with the idea that the two sides didn't listen to each other at all. That is not a fair characterization to anybody about where you are at today. Um, of course, it could be better. It could be different. Um, um, Welcome to life in the legislature. But it's not. It's not. It's not. It's not. It hasn't been entirely a win-lose situation, and I just wanted to say that out loud. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Phil, for that additional perspective. And yes, this has been a very challenging and unusual year for the Iowa
Yeah.
County Recorders Association, and we continue to monitor and remain hopeful for some type of positive outcomes in the long term. And so if there's nothing further, I would like to adjourn in a timely manner. Anybody else on the committee have any comments they would like to add following our vote?
I would just like to thank the committee that worked on the modernization study bill. We've been working on it for 18 months, and I thought it was wonderfully presented, and it's been a long road and haul. And with that study, we've also gotten where we are today. So I want to thank them all that participated in that.
Agreed. It has been a long haul and their work has been of value to the association.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ann.
You bet.
Appreciate
Thank you, everyone. And we will adjourn at 10:41 and keep in touch.
Thank you very much, Ann.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Take care.